Morning reaction presented by Max. I'm Mitch, here to give you 5 teams after week 2 that should panic. They're in trouble. And 5 NFL teams that surprised once again in week 2. Maybe they even won in week 1. They're 2-0. Teams that could surprise for the rest of the season, and they're not going anywhere. So let me know in the live chat what you guys think about my top 5s on both lists. Last week, week 2, absolutely crazy, man. Absolutely a crazy week in the NFL. We had 6 underdogs, 6 win outright in just the early window alone. So, I mean, there was bound to be some crazy headlines. I'm going to get to the teams that really impress me. I'm going to get to the teams that I think need to hit that panic button. And we're going to begin first with, in my opinion, the more fun teams to discuss. Always for me, it's the teams that need to panic, man. The 5 teams after week 2 that I think really need to do some deep self-scouting. So let's begin with the Los Angeles Rams. And this one, if you would have asked me, will the Rams be a team that you're just jumping off the train, jumping off the bandwagon after week 1? If you would have asked me before this season, I probably would have said it's most likely due to injuries. And what has happened to the Los Angeles Rams? They've gotten injured. All their key playmakers, really outside of Matthew Stafford and Kyren Williams, are injured. Their entire offensive line, injured. Puka Nacua, week 1, injured. Cooper Kupp, week 2, injured, right? Their offensive line, man, in shambles. Like, they're starting a week 2 starting offensive line in the NFL. That is their entire backup offensive line. That is not a good scene for any football team, for any quarterback, for any coach. Even if it's Stafford and McVay, there's only so much you can do to overcome that. So I look at their collapse against the Cardinals, and yes, everything went the right direction. Everything went well for the Cardinals. Like, everything. They were making 50-50 balls turn into 80-20 balls out there. Like, it was outrageous how the Cardinals were playing, especially on offense. But this team right now, I think, should panic because they can't protect the passer. Everything they have to throw from Stafford's vantage point is short, underneath, yards after catch throws, and every defense moving forward now knows how to defend them, given what the Cardinals put on tape. If you stop the run, which they're stopping themselves because they can't block, and you can get after Stafford and force them into third down, second down, and longs, it's going to be really uncomfortable the entire day. The defense, I think we saw them fall back down to earth after week 1. Week 1, they played impressive against the Lions, in my opinion. They got pushed around at the end of that game in overtime, but they definitely played better than we expected. Week 2, they were who we thought they were, right? And that's exactly what I expect moving forward, like a bottom 7 defense. They're very young. They don't have a lot of talent in the secondary, and they're not very athletic up front. They really struggled with Kyler Murray. So I think the Rams are in big trouble on both sides of the football. The second team that I think should absolutely panic entering week 3 is the Miami Dolphins. Yes, the Miami Dolphins should absolutely panic. And I'm not just saying this as a Patriots fan, although it does at times bring a smile to my face with the Miami Dolphins. But, man, this team's in trouble. And I would have said this even if Tua did not get hurt. Obviously, unfortunate scene with Tua. He really has been just a roller coaster to watch in his NFL career. He's had great highs, he's had great moments, but he's also had so many lows. At the start of his career was rough. Now he's just dealing with all the concussions and the head injuries. And man, I just hated to see that play. I thought that was honestly like a dumb play by him. He just like should have slid. He should have got down. He should have protected himself. But I also understand the competitor inside of him to try to make that play, to try to be like Josh Allen on the other side and run the defender over. So he was trying to spark his team, and it didn't pay off for him. Now they have Snoop Huntley at quarterback. Snoop Huntley, who is also known as Tyler Huntley, and was a Pro Bowl quarterback. That's what everyone is going to tweet out. Pro Bowl quarterback. Huntley is signed with the Miami Dolphins. He does not play like a Pro Bowl quarterback, in my opinion, okay? The Dolphins have more problems than just quarterback, though. Their offensive line can't get pushed in the running game. They can't push people off the line of scrimmage and actually run the ball in between the tackles. All of their offense against Buffalo was screens, smoke and mirrors, misdirection, handoffs, reverses, fake, no-look screen to Jonnu Smith. I don't know what Mike McDaniel put into that game plan. I don't know what he was thinking, but to make Jonnu Smith the featured element of your offense over Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle in the passing game, you got issues. You have issues. The pass protection, especially in the interior, is extremely weak. Their guards stink. Their center has downgraded from last year. 3 interceptions from Tua, who is playing awful. And it continues to be an issue for this team against good teams. They play a team like Buffalo. They get beat at the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. They didn't stop the run against James Cook, shredded. They couldn't, pass protect. They couldn't run the ball consistently on early downs, which puts them in bad situations. And then Tua can't overcome everything around him. He can't make plays outside of the structure of the offense. It's just really bad all the way around for this football team. I think even if Tua comes back, they're in trouble. I don't see them going anywhere because they're too weak at the line of scrimmage and they're too reliant on speed and scheme. We got some comments here before we get to the third team that I think you should panic about after week 2. Dallas is definitely in trouble, says Claw. I actually am going to get to Dallas here in a second. Minnesota looks good, but we have seen this before with Darnold in Carolina. Let's see how long he can sustain his play. I will say, you're not panicking about the Vikings. If anything, you're elated. The Vikings are 2-0, and they just beat the Niners, who I still think are the favorite in the NFC. So, and nobody really expect the Vikings to have more than like 7 wins, to be honest. So, New Orleans might be for real this year. They might be in the segment a little bit later. Miami, Dallas, and Baltimore should be panicking right now. Baltimore is an interesting one. I don't have Baltimore, quite at the same level as some of these other teams, but we definitely need to talk about them because there's some things to be concerned about. Miami, I agree with. And then Red Skull says, no need to panic in Baltimore. Coach is just selling us. Okay, let's get to the Dallas Cowboys, which everybody loves to panic about. The Dallas Cowboys just lost their first game of the season, but they were absolutely punished in week number 2. They were destroyed, annihilated. They lost their first game at home, I think, in the last 17 games in the regular season. I saw a stat that there were 16-0 the last 2 regular seasons at home. You have a problem in Dallas when that is the case, right? Because they've been so potent, so explosive. They get ahead, they rush the passer, they run the ball, and they put teams away. And Dak and CD are just on another level in Jerry world, but not against the Saints. And what was the biggest issue against the Saints? Well, you know what's a big issue? 6 touchdown drives allowed in a row. That's an issue. You can't allow 6 touchdown drives in a row in an NFL game and expect to win. You can't allow 35 points in the first half. So yeah, people are going to sit here and say you paid too much money to Dak. Dak isn't that good. CD Lamb, he got all this money. Where's the offense? They only scored 19 points or whatever. Well, the problem is it's exactly like the Packers game. They're getting absolutely just shredded in all aspects of defense. They can't stop the run. They're getting overpowered in the running game. The Saints' new zone blocking, outside zone scheme. Like the Cowboys, once again, all the same issues we saw against Green Bay. Well, we got a Shanahan disciple with Matt LaFleur. Aaron Jones runs all over us. Play action crossing routes all day, wide open. Deep post routes, wide open. We've got screens, wide open, big plays. Like, same game plan. Where the Saints literally just took the Packers game plan, copied, pasted it, and just did it again. And Derek Carr, sensational against this Dallas defense. What do you have to do against Derek Carr? You got to pressure Derek Carr. They didn't get any pressure. Why? Because they can't stop the run. When you can't stop the run, you can't be in situations where you can actually rush the quarterback. So I look at this team and I just saw a lot of holes entering the season. Like the Cowboys had a bunch of holes entering the year compared to last year. Pass blocking, left tackle, center, rookie players. They definitely are a little bit weaker there. And the defensive line of the Saints, in important aspects of this game, they got pressure. They forced turnovers. There was a little bit of unfortunate, plays there with Dak Prescott throwing the ball. It was intercepted, but his receiver slipped. It was a little unfortunate. We saw CeeDee Lamb make an incredible play. We saw Jalen Tolbert step it up, without Ferguson out there at wide receiver, but it feels like a one-dimensional offense. They can't run the ball. They can't keep the pass rush from being predictable and pinning their ears back and coming after Prescott and pressuring Prescott. I don't care who your quarterback is. If the other team knows you have to pass every play to move the ball, you're in trouble on offense. And you need to get the run game going. Look at the Saints. Look at what they've become just because they can run the ball. It's made their passing offense one of the most explosive in the NFL. So I see a lot of issues with the Cowboys. The back end, I thought they far exceeded expectations in week one because they played Deshaun Watson, who can't throw the football. He can't accurately distribute the ball to his receivers. Zimmer has a quite simple scheme. When you know what he's playing, a lot of quarters coverages, you're going to be able to draw things up on the board that you can take to Sundays, and you can deliver a nice script through the air for Derek Carr to hit bombs down the field, right? Like Rashid Shaheed on a deep post, just running by people. So the Cowboys have issues on both sides of the ball, especially in terms of run game. That to me stands out. Then we have at number 4, the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts, man, just flat out, there's no other word for it. The Colts are absolutely embarrassing. The Colts were ran over on Sunday. You want to read some stats off? This game is a box score game, okay? 40 minutes of time of possession allowed. 40 minutes. But that's not the worst thing. They allowed the other team to run 53 runs on them and win. 53 runs. 10 for 17 on third down. 261 rushing yards from a team that had Malik Willis at quarterback. Malik Willis. Bro, they literally did not want to throw the ball. They wanted to do anything but throw the ball. The Colts were shredded by the Texans in week 1 on the ground. Dominated, bullied on the ground by the Texans. What do they do entering week 2? We're playing Malik Willis. What is LaFleur going to do? Run the ball 32 times with Josh Jacobs? We still can't stop it. We still can't stop it. You deserve to lose. It's embarrassing. And then on the other side, you have Anthony Richardson, one of the most overhyped quarterbacks entering this season. My goodness. Now, did he make some splash plays in week 1 that impressed me? That one throw to Alec Pierce, absolutely outrageous. Does he have that type of upside and athletic specimen profile to just take over games? Absolutely. Can he run a guy over on 4th and goal at the 3-yard line and get a touchdown? Absolutely. At his best, he looks like the next Cam Newton. At his worst, he looks like the current version of Deshaun Watson. Too inconsistent, no rhythm. Because he can't complete a pass, they have no time of possession. They allow the other team. Texans had a lot of time of possession. So do the Packers, right? He is exclusively big plays. 47% completion and 50% completion in 2 weeks in the year 2024 is not going to get it done, especially with all these plays that people are running on Sundays where it's a screen. It's a quick throw to the flat designed for the running back to get blocks ahead of him. Like, you should at least be having a 60% completion percentage. I don't care what your passing offense looks like. 4 interceptions in the last 2 games. I mean, the defense can't stop the run. They have no corners. They can't cover. This team is a disaster. A lot of people were talking about them like they were going to be some sort of underdog story, some dark horse. Bro, their quarterback can't consistently throw the ball, and their defense can't do anything. Gus Bradley, he's way too far behind schematically, and they can't stop the run now, which is like Gus Bradley's thing. 474 rushing yards allowed, 75 more yards than second worst in the NFL, 5.1 yards per carry. Guys, the Panthers are the worst team I've ever seen. The Colts have allowed 75 more rushing yards than the Carolina Panthers. That's embarrassing, okay? Let's take a look at what people are saying in the chat once again. Fire McDaniels, bring Belichick in. I think you mean McDaniel because Josh McDaniels is not currently a coach. But Belichick would probably bring in Josh McDaniels because that's his boy. The Bengals definitely need to panic. I disagree, actually. And the reason for that is I thought they looked really good against the Chiefs. I thought they were actually the better team. I thought they should have won. And there were a lot of promising signs. So they didn't show up to week one. We saw that. But I also don't think the Patriots are a great matchup for the Bengals. Side note, just because they have a very good defense and they're able to cover the Bengals and get after Burrow. And their offense, they have, an OC that's from Cleveland and who always beats the Bengals. Cleveland, like every year, twice. That loss to the Raiders broke my spirit. The O-line is going to be a problem all season. Let's transition into the Ravens because the Ravens broke my spirit as well. Not really. I actually kind of enjoyed the Raiders getting the upset, to be honest, because I kind of called it. Like, I don't know what it is with Gardner Minshew, but the guy owns the Ravens. He beat the Ravens last year too, and he beat Lamar last year, right? But the Raiders, man, they're a different story. But the Ravens, you can't lose this game. Like the way they lost, you can't lose this game. And the thing about the Ravens is they lose this game like twice a year on average. Like you look at it right now, 10 losses in the last 5 years with at least a 7-point lead in the fourth quarter. 10 losses in the last 5 years with a touchdown lead in the fourth quarter. That is the most in the NFL, right? 9th double-digit lead blown by John Harbaugh in his career, right? So you can't lose that game, especially against the Raiders. You didn't lose this to Mahomes. You didn't lose this to Allen. You didn't lose this to Manning, Brady, Breeze. You lost it to Gardner Minshew, okay? And a team that's a run-heavy team, a team that plays defense, a team that grinds out games. Like, yeah, they have Devontae Adams and Brock Bowers, but that's where the ball is going, and you still couldn't stop it, which is a bigger issue with the Ravens. Their defense is not the same as last year, and who would have thought? You lose 3 defensive coaches. 2 of them right now, Mike McDonald, I believe it's Weaver in Tennessee, or maybe that's the one. Regardless, whoever's in Tennessee, I know there's Weaver might be in Miami. Regardless, doing a great job in Tennessee. But 3 defensive coaches left. Mike McDonald, head coach of the Seahawks, defensive coordinator for the Dolphins, defensive coordinator for the Titans, right? That's a lot of brain power. Then you lose Patrick Queen. Then you lose Jadeveon Clowney. Then you lose Geno Stone, who's helped that Bengal pass defense. Like, you lose all these pieces. We thought it was going to happen. But they have not been good in these first 2 games, in my opinion. Suspect in coverage, especially in the middle of the field. Pass rush was spotty in this game. They definitely got pressure on Minshew early, but when it really mattered, they can't finish games because they don't have a great pass rusher on their team. You can't be relying on old man Kyle Van Noy to finish games. And they couldn't cover the 2 guys you got to cover on the Raiders. Bowers and Devontae Adams just did whatever they wanted when they came from behind. And the offense is just weird to me. I hate watching this offense, and I love Lamar, but I hate watching this offense. It has no consistency through the air. It has no rhythm. It has very little identity in terms of the run and the pass game being correlated with each other. We see so many offenses. Look at the Saints right now, how they're tying together the run game and the pass game. Like the scheme of the Ravens and then the way they use their playmakers. It's Zay Flowers is electric. Isaiah Likely is a dog. Mark Andrews is still good and Lamar is special and Derrick Henry's there, but it feels like they just kind of okay, we need to get Zay the ball here. We need to throw the ball to Likely because he hasn't gotten the ball yet. We need to run the ball because we're the Ravens. They have no real rhyme or reason. Whenever you watch McVay or Shanahan or these offenses at the top of the league, Ben Johnson, they tie things together and they make things, very hard for a defense to kind of grasp and an attack, right? So the Ravens just don't have that to me, and that's going to make them concerning against the best teams in the NFL. And they couldn't block Max Crosby, so that doesn't help. All right, so those are the 5 teams that should panic after week 2. Before we get to the 5 teams that surprised in the first 2 weeks and week 2, let's talk about the players that owned the field. All right, it's time for players who own the field this weekend, presented by Max. The HBO original limited series, The Penguin, premieres September 19th on Max. I can't wait for The Penguin. I'm super excited to watch that. Let's get to the 4 players that I absolutely love. Well, technically 5 that dominated in week 2. So first, Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray and his boy Marvin Harrison Jr. The connection was real in week 2. Fantasy owners after week 1, panic. Marvin Harrison didn't get any targets. Well, little did we know, the Bills just have a really good secondary, guys. They just have a really good secondary. They have really good corners. Rasul Douglas. This week, man, Kyler Murray looked like he was playing Madden. The Roadrunner went beep, beep. He was just running around, avoiding sacks. Like, there was a play where I think it was Young who was trying to sack him, and he avoided him like 3 times, and then he threw the ball in the end zone for a touchdown. The guy was absolutely unreal. I think he broke the PFF scale. He got like a 99.9 PFF grade. He went 17 for 21, 266 passing yards, 3 touchdowns through the air, 5 rushes for 59 yards. And what I loved about Kyler in this game, the elusiveness, the deep ball, the rushing explosion was there when he needed it. But more importantly, most of the production came through the air, which is nice to see with Kyler because we know how dynamic he is when he runs the ball. But we saw that deep ball unleashed to Marvin Harrison Jr. with 2 big touchdowns down the field, 4 catches, 130 yards, 2 touchdowns, a Randy Moss-like stat line as a rookie right there. Marvin Harrison let the NFL know that he's a number 1 receiver. He was burning people. And a big concern after week 1 was his speed. Well, he showed that he could get behind the defense. He could make big plays for this offense. And that's going to draw a lot of attention moving forward. So those 2 guys absolutely dominated the field. We've got J.K. Dobbins at the running back position for the Los Angeles Chargers. I just want to say, like, regardless of stat line, 17 rushes, 131 yards, 7.7 yards per carry, and a touchdown. It's just a good story to see a guy like J.K. Dobbins, who's had multiple serious injuries, who was touted coming out of college to play at a high level at running back in the NFL. And then he's able to come back and be the same player, if not a better player, and go to a new team and then still be the RB1 and then bring this Chargers team to their new identity. Run the football, play defense, control the clock, don't make mistakes. That's the Jim Harbaugh way for this football team, and Dobbins is at the heart and soul of this new attack. So Dobbins deserves a lot of credit for running over the Carolina Panthers. Aiden Hutchinson, I know they lost, but 4.5 sacks is just outrageous. He was just bullying the backup right tackle on the Bucs all day long. I don't know why they weren't doubling Hutchinson and letting Tristan Wirfs just have whoever else on the other side. But man, I guess they eventually figured it out. But 4.5 sacks is insanity. And Hutchinson might be on his way to being Defensive Player of the Year candidate. We're already seeing great things out of Chris Jones, out of TJ Watt, out of Max Crosby. But Aiden Hutchinson is really putting the NFL on notice that he might be the biggest game wrecker in the NFL right now. And then my final player that owned the field. This is just a collection of the game plan, just wizardry from Matt LaFleur. Almost got that word. Josh Jacobs, 32 carries. 32 carries. Josh Jacobs. That's why you signed Josh Jacobs. That's why you let go of Aaron Jones, right? Why? Because Josh Jacobs can carry the ball 32 times in an NFL game. When we have Malik Willis, we're going to turn back the clock to 1967 football, hand the ball to Josh Jacobs 32 times. We're going to control the clock, 40 minutes of time of possession. We're going to go 10 for 17 on third down. We're going to put up 261 rushing yards as a team, and we're going to let our workhorse, our highly paid running back, carry us to victory and play some defense. That's exactly what happened. So those are the players that own the field in week 2. Now it's time for the 5 teams that surprised in week 2 and are here to absolutely stay. So let's begin with the team that everybody is talking about after week 2. That is the New Orleans Saints. That's right. They might actually be good. I came on here after week 1. I was like, the Saints, they won like convincingly, but they did not beat a good team. They beat the Panthers, right? The Panthers, who have scored 13 points in 2 weeks, by the way. They don't even deserve to be in the disappointing panic section anymore. But the Saints, they are actually good, I think. They just punished the Cowboys. And no matter what you think of the Cowboys, they really dominated this game from start to finish. They go to Dallas, a place that nobody has won a game in the regular season for the past 2 regular seasons. And Derek Carr turns back the clock to 2016. Alvin Kamara turns back the clock to 2018. And they're dominating through the air and on the ground. And I look at this offense and I love their mixture of run and pass. I love their heavy utilization of under center play action, of a fullback, of a running game, right? Kamara in this like outside zone, like Kubiak, Shanahan inspired rushing attack was absolutely fantastic. His balance is something to marvel at. The way that he takes on contact, he's able to bounce off of people, continue his momentum, his stop-start ability, his vision. He looks like he's turning back the clock. I think he's 29 as a running back. I mean, usually guys are falling off the cliff at this point, but he looks better than he has the last 2-3 years in this system. The offensive line is doing a great job of moving people in the running game. They did it to Carolina. They once again do it to Dallas, right? What can be exposed on Dallas? We know that the run defense has been weak the last couple of years. The Saints attacked it. And then off of that running game, they're hitting big plays down the field. They're play actioning. Early, the first drive, crossers, like Chris Olave, Shaheed crossers. Then later on, deep post. Shaheed is a burner, man. He's one of the fastest receivers in the NFL. Deep post down the field. That's 2 weeks in a row that Shaheed has hit on that play. Carr thrown a beauty ball down the field. And Carr is really, really, really confident right now. He's seeing the blitz coming. He's getting the ball out when he needs to. He's hitting these deep passes. And this offense really does like expose Derek Carr to hide his biggest deficiency. Derek Carr's deficiencies are not physical. Right? He's not the most mobile guy in the world, but his deficiencies have always been mental. He gets in his own head. He's a little soft in the pocket. He doesn't often throw the ball down the field. Well, this offense is like, you better throw the ball down the field, or else, like, we're not going to make any plays. So they run the ball, they throw the ball down the field. They're making explosives. That's what the NFL is all about right now. You've got to create explosive plays to win. Screen plays are going for big plays when they call them. It's very Niners and Texans-esque on that side of the ball. And then defensively, we know they're good. Like, they've been good, even when they were bad. Dennis Allen runs a good defense. They've got a lot of veterans that know how to run this defense. Their pass rush made plays. Carl Granderson, these guys made plays when they needed to. And then their secondary, Tyrann Mathieu, was hitting people. They didn't even have Marshawn Lattimore, and they still exposed Dallas in this game. So the Saints might actually be good. I think they're here to stay. I'm not saying they're going to win the NFC, but I do think they're looking like a pretty good playoff team at this point. They've got a good formula of balance on offense and a good, strong defense. Then we've got the next team that I think totally has surprised in terms of, I didn't expect them to beat the Detroit Lions. That's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I expected them to command the Commanders, but beating the Lions in Detroit is something that not a lot of teams have done the last 2 seasons. The Bucs, right? Like, Baker Mayfield has been arguably the MVP of the NFL so far. I know that he didn't have like a great stat line in week 2, but he's constantly under duress, constantly under pressure. Third down, because they don't have a running game, he's always making plays on third down. He's escaping. He's throwing the ball down the field. Like, he's throwing the ball accurately. He's getting rid of the ball on time. Like, Baker has played unbelievable football these first 2 weeks, which has put them in position to be right there with the Saints first in the NFC South. Who would have thought Bucs, Saints, the NFC South in general being actually pretty good in the first 2 weeks? But you look at what Tampa did in this game, and it was a little fluky. Don't get me wrong. Like, the Lions had way more yards, 463 yards, to only 216 yards for the Bucs. Like, that's a little fluky. 26 first downs for the Lions to 14 first downs for the Bucs. But they didn't have so many players. Like, they didn't have their right tackle. They didn't have Kalijah Cansey, one of their best defensive players. They didn't have Antoine Winfield, probably their best defensive player. They were down like depth on their defense. So to me, the Bucs to be able to go there, withstand Hutchinson getting 4.5 sacks, right? All those yards. Chris Godwin looked amazing again. He was just constantly dominant early in the game, which allowed them to get the lead, right? And Baker just did a better job than Goff. Like, he outplayed Goff in this game. Goff was rattled, and I think Todd Bowles did a great job of making sure that he was pressured, making sure that he was pressed to try to make a throw under duress. And guys like Zion McCollum really stood out. Christian Izine really stood out, replacing Antoine Winfield at the safety position. McCollum looks like he could be a real player. He's actually the replacement for Carlton Davis this year. So, I mean, if the Bucs had another pass rusher on the edge, I'd be super excited about this team. I think their offensive line's the best it's been in a couple of years. Their receiving core is deep and talented, and Evans and Godwin are still playing at a high level. If they can find a way to run the ball and take a little pressure off Baker, they're going to be a really tough team to beat in all scenarios. They can play on the road. They can play at home. They can win through defense. They can win through offense. They're explosive on offense. So the Bucs, I think they're here to stay. They look like a playoff team again in 2024. The Minnesota Vikings are a team that I think, are a surprise. Don't get me wrong, but really look the part of an underdog that can actually go on to put together a nice season. And what I mean by that is the Vikings are 2-0. They've destroyed a bad team in the Giants, and they've put together a great game plan in order to upset one of the best teams in the NFL at home. And that's typically where those upsets happen, especially in Minnesota. In my opinion, one of the best home fields in football. They upset San Francisco again. They seem to have the Niners number. Last year, they outplayed the Niners. They beat the Niners, and both games were very similar, right? Like, the Niners moved the ball. They had a ton of yards and stuff like that. But they were able to be very effective in terms of forcing mistakes, 2 forced turnovers. They were able to be very effective on defense in terms of 3rd and 4th down high leverage plays, 3 for 13 on 3rd and 4th down. They had 2 4th down stops in the game. And Brian Flores continues to be, for my money, right now, the best defensive coordinator in the league. Like, what he's able to do, taking players that nobody's ever heard of and elevating them to the next level. He did this with this defense last year that many people were projecting to be like the worst defense in the league. No one had ever heard of their corners. No one had ever heard of their safeties outside of Harrison Smith. Their linebackers were unproven, right? They took like an undrafted Ivan Pace, made him a star. Like, now they actually have some players, right? Like Jonathan Grenard, Andrew Van Ginkel, Blake Cashman. Those two in particular had amazing games against the Niners. Van Ginkel continues to be just a complete game breaker and game changer in terms of playmaking ability. Like, he can get an interception. He can get a sack. Cashman's flying around. Pat Jones had 2 sacks. They sacked Brock Purdy 6 times. And Brock Purdy is one of the best guys at avoiding sacks. Even if the Niners allow pressure, he's very good at getting away from it. And they just cause a lot of problems for Shanahan's offense because they're chaotic. They don't know what the defense is. It's very unconventional. It causes a lot of protection issues for the Niners. And it brings that sort of chaotic vibe to a game that the Niners don't love to have, especially when they're falling behind in a game. And Kevin O'Connell comes out there. He draws up some great game plan plays on offense. They get a lead. They hit a big play to Justin Jefferson. That should happen every game. Sam Darnold, really good in the pocket. Sam Darnold, really accurate, feels very confident in there, really believes in his protection. They're running the ball, effectively. So I look at this team and I feel like if Sam Darnold continues to play this type of football, where it's 4 touchdowns to 2 interceptions, 476 yards, most importantly, 72 completion percentage. He's getting the ball out. He's completing passes. He's not erratic. He's not like all over the place in terms of accuracy and footwork, and 111 passer rating. Like, he's protecting the ball. He's making enough throws to win. And he actually did it at the end of the game without Jefferson, which was even more impressive. If this team continues to play that type of defense, chaotic, turnover heavy, and then an offense that can be balanced, that can get the ball to Jefferson. They don't have Addison. They don't have Hawkinson. They put those guys on offense as well, and Darnold continues to play this way. This could be a playoff team for sure. So I think the Vikings are somewhat for real. I'm not saying they're going to be a contender, but I do think they have that capacity to upset anybody in the NFL. Then you have the Arizona Cardinals, who we talked about, right? Cardinals 1-1, but they were up 17-3 on the Bills in week 1. We just saw the Bills go to Miami, and the game was never close against the Dolphins. A lot of people thought the Dolphins were going to win that game against the Bills. So the Bills look like legit. They're back to being a legit contender, right? The Cardinals, they were up on the Bills in Buffalo, and we were all like, oh, that's cute. But then in week 2, they come out at home opener, and the game is just an annihilation. It's like an embarrassment. I've never seen Sean McVay lose in a game that badly. I've never seen this Rams team, this Rams, tenure lose this bad in a game. So I look at the Cardinals and I see an offense that's one of the most explosive and fun to watch in football. Marvin Harrison Jr., Kyler Murray, that combination. But then you've got Trey McBride. You've got Greg Dortch. You've got James Conner running the football, breaking tackles, catching the football. You've got guys like Michael Wilson, 2 touchdowns in 2 weeks, I believe. You have so many different guys. Higgins caught a touchdown. They have a deep playmaking core. They've got really legit top options in Marvin Harrison and Trey McBride. They've got a running back that's dynamic. They've got a quarterback that can pretty much play when he's at his best. Kyler Murray can play as well as anybody in the league. Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, at his best, he can play as good as anybody from a playmaking, elusiveness, creation standpoint. So that's why I love this team. And then they did lose their right tackle, but it didn't really show up in this game from a pass protection standpoint. They completely, I thought, had a great game plan on defense. They completely eliminated Cooper Kupp early in the game. They were all over the quick, short passes on Stafford. I thought Dennis Gardeck had a great game. He had 3 sacks early in the game. He had some big sacks to end drives so their offense could get the ball back. But the bottom line is, if they can tie together great explosive offense, big plays on offense, with a defense that's well coordinated, that's well schemed, and can create havoc, kind of like the Vikings, they're going to be a team that's hard to beat, especially in Arizona on that dome, that quick playing surface, because they are a fast team. So the Cardinals 1-1, they're a team that I look at the NFC West and I say, this is a tough division right now, but they are they're really fighting, I think, for a wild card spot. I don't think they have quite as consistent enough defense to win the division or go toe-to-toe with the Niners, but I feel like they've got a good enough quarterback, a good enough, kind of overall vision and identity that they could make the wild card. And the 5th and final team that is a surprise is the Pittsburgh Steelers. Pittsburgh Steelers are a surprise. They're not really a surprise. You could probably alternate the Steelers for a team like the Chargers, the Seahawks, or the Patriots. Those teams also came to mind for me. But the Pittsburgh Steelers are 2-0. And they're 2-0 with who is supposedly their backup quarterback. So Justin Fields, backup quarterback, not doing anything wrong. And that's exactly what he's supposed to do. He's not really doing anything great, right? He's not really making a lot of big plays. But what was Justin Fields so horrible at in Chicago? Taking sacks, turning it over in crucial moments, all these things that you just can't have to win games in the NFL. Mike Tomlin's basically instructed him, don't turn it over, take the sack if you need to take the sack, but also run and try to avoid it and just pick up some yards. We'll punt, we'll play field position, try to throw the ball to Pickens as much as possible. We're going to run the ball a ton, and we're going to have the best defense in the NFL. And that's why I feel like the Steelers are a surprise team that can stay, because they're 2-0. They're first place in their division in the tough AFC North, and the Ravens and the Bengals are 0-2. That's also a major factor. But the Steelers, they have the best defense for my money in the league. They have a great pass rush. Watt and Highsmith ruin games. They're not going to be ran on. Pat Queen in the linebacking core is faster, twitchier than ever. They can cover in space. And then the secondary has a legit number 1 corner in Porter. Their safeties, Elliott was a great addition alongside Minkah Fitzpatrick. Great play from their safeties. Now, I wish they had more at receiver, and I wish they were better in the passing game. Now, maybe if they go back to Russ, or not back, but they go to Russ, I feel like their passing game could be better, but they might have a little less upside in the running game with Fields, but they haven't really been using Fields in that way, so it's kind of odd. But, you know, I actually think this team is going to be just a pain in the butt for everybody because their defense is going to keep them in games. They're going to grind out 17, 13 games every week of the NFL season. It's going to be ugly, but it's going to be productive. It's going to be effective. It's going to be Mike Tomlin, Pittsburgh Steelers, steel curtain football. And that's the way they like it in Pittsburgh. So those are the 5 NFL teams that surprised in week 2, that have surprised so far, and I think are here to stay. And those are the 10 teams that I really wanted to discuss after week 2, guys. So that'll do it for Monday Morning Reaction. I'm Mitch. It's been presented by Max, and we'll see you next week. Thank you guys for watching. Peace.